Welcome back to Artificial Antics, where Rico and Mike will talk about the implications and opportunities around artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. For this episode, Artificial Intelligence, a year in review, the guys will talk about trends, the biggest wins, fails, and their predictions as we get ready for 2025.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another exciting episode of Artificial Antics. You're in for a big show tonight as we do our year in review now that we've passed the 1 year mark. So I'll hand it over to my co-host, Mike. Mike?
Hey, everybody. Rico and I are just getting together here. We've got some folks on deck for, guests on the show. Really exciting stuff coming up here. And we wanted to kind of do a year in review for you all. A lot's happened in the last year. We're a little over our 1 year mark. And Rico, so I think we could just dive right in here.
Sure.
Do you want to start? What do you want to start with? Do you want to start with some trends?
Yeah, let's start with some of the things that we've seen kind of evolve throughout the year and what really kind of tipped our highlights as far as things that we were involved in early on that we've seen progress. So let's talk. How about we talk generative art up front?
Yeah, that sounds good. So throughout the year, what have you seen, like, as far as an evolution? What products really impressed you? What was underwhelming?
Yeah, so I think for me, I know MidJourney was like a big one, and MidJourney, of course, led me into other products like we talked about Final Frame. We've covered that before, and some of the others that allowed you to take a static image and then create a video around that image, as well as the other iterations that progressed other versions of MidJourney over time that we saw. And of course, other people got into that game, and you saw Leonardo AI jumped in and some of the others. So do you have any favorites, I think, with generative art that you got into?
Yeah, I would say the ones that really impressed me were definitely MidJourney. I would say that DALL-E 3, it has its own little spin or its own little twist on generative art. Obviously, in my mind, it's more, I'm going to call it the generic, right? DALL-E 3 is more the generic, where MidJourney, I feel like, is much more creative and produces cooler looking stuff. But here's the one that really blew my mind, dude, was that Focus model, right? We did that episode on stability AI, and they had the stable diffusion. Yep. And one of the open source projects is called Focus with 3 O's. And the stuff that we generated with that and being able to generate consistent, people across multiple different types of images, that is one of the only places I really saw that done well. So that one really hit for me.
For sure. And that was also cheaper too, because you could get an iteration of that that was offline. Yeah. So it was a lot better than paying, say, MidJourney with $10 a month or whatever it was, depending on the package you want. Yep. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, like, I would say that, stability AI and the stable diffusion and all that, like that, again, they all look a little different, right? DALL-E looks kind of one way, and MidJourney
cartoony,
looks another
right?
way, and like they're all kind of their own thing. Stability, I would say, no, actually is like not even cartoony, but more like base, raw, like imp types of images.
Realistic.
Which for people, the realism, especially Focus, really dials that in. They actually tune that model specifically for realism. So it's a whole different thing, right? Whereas like MidJourney, it's like you can clearly tell something generated by MidJourney generally. You can clearly tell something generated by DALL-E. I'm just taking it, going back to the original, the Bing image generator, which was DALL-E 3, and how we probably tried to generate, ourselves as, caricatures together in one image for 9 hours or something, and we never really got it. And just a quick tip for the folks at home, what we ended up doing, folks, is we ended up generating one that looked like me and in the style that we wanted me to be in, and one that looked like Rico. And then I took my Photoshop skills and tied those two together. So so generative art. So lots of great stuff. Anything else in generative art? I'm just scrolling through my list here. I'm not seeing anything else that jumped out of me. Anything on your side?
No, not really. But I want to say that for folks who don't know, if you take a look at our logo and some of the earlier works, we've kind of kept the same branding, but that was all generated, in our start, and that was using DALL-E 3 and, of course, Mike's Adobe Photoshop skills. So we hope you still enjoy those to this day, and we will probably see them change maybe sometime in the future, but our branding is important to us, and that's where we came from, so we're sticking with it for now.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the one thing that I'll say is, like, I was able to go outside of my normal skill set and do something that I would call, more aspirational because of the AI tooling, right? And it wasn't just me spending 5 or 6, maybe we spend 9 hours, but we didn't spend 9 days, right?
Right, and I think that's a perfect segue there too, Mike. Is also, what do we want from AI? What have we seen from it this year? And a lot of it has moved to enhancing people, right? We talk about the human side of AI and giving people tools that are able to make them do things either 10x or have an ability that they don't otherwise have, whether it's creative art or coding or that type of thing. So I think that's a great segue to move into how about something that has shown you an increase in productivity, perhaps, that AI has added?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I've been a coder for many years. I love writing code, and I never want to let that go, let's say. But in the same breath, I want, I don't love just typing things in, right? That's not the fun part for me. The fun part for me is architecting, designing, working with stakeholders and business people and solving problems, right? I don't really care about typing the code in, right? So in most cases, so I'll bring, I think this is definitely 100% evolved over the year, right? We had, the initial cases where you had some tools like, people were using ChatGPT or they were using Claude for coding. There were a few things along the way, like, supposed to be, Devin AI, he's supposed to be your coder. and the thing is, they debunked that pretty quickly. It was 100%. I mean, it was just the same stuff. Like, it was basically a wrapper around ChatGPT to do a certain thing. But you've got GitHub Copilot, right? That was another early one, right? The start was like GitHub Copilot, some ChatGPT augmentation. Now I've been using Replit, and so Replit is a place where you can build code as well as like host projects, and that becomes really beneficial when you want to create very quick little tests and experiments. And as folks know, we're in the lab, right? Like, so I'm always in the lab. And Replit launched with their own AI called Replit AI, and that was about a half a year ago. Maybe it was even longer ago, but it wasn't really super good in the beginning. And I've seen that evolve over time. I'm really fast with. Actually, 2 weeks ago, I could say I'm really fast with ChatGPT and Replit AI, kind of the combination of those things. Within the last week or so, Replit has released, and this is one of the big surprises, released Replit AI agents. And AI agents are AIs, and we've talked about this since the beginning of the show, right? Agents or Agenic AI is where, it's going out, it's making a plan, it's, deploying some agents to do pieces of that plan, it's checking its own work, right? Really cool stuff. But you run into some problems that are kind of like, omnipresent in that usage, which one of them is, repeating itself or looping. And I did run into some of that with Replit AI agents right away. But in the same breath, I did 4, let's call it, experiments with it so far over the last couple of days. Probably spent about 5 hours with it, honestly, or maybe it's less than that. But man, the first one was kind of rough. The second one was better. The third and fourth ones were really, really good, to where I could take my idea truly. And there are a few things, like Airtable has a thing too. It's like, generate an app, and you think, I wanted this, and it really just builds out like some Airtable stuff, which makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. It builds out an interface, but it's super like, that's easy to do. Replit is truly like taking, building out your code from, hey, let's call it your Python poetry configuration, which are the packages, to, hey, let's set up your deployment and, map your networking and stuff like that. And it does all of it while you're like sitting there watching it. It also creates a plan. And I demoed this to multiple people at work the last couple of days. I was like, watch this, boom, turn my screen and just like, let's watch this generate an application right now. And one of the cool things that I think that I like about it a lot is that it generates kind of a plan, right? Which all of these have generated a plan, but it will think of things that I don't think of, right? Like with an API yesterday, I was like, hey, I want you to generate me a Python application that can reach out to DeepGram and transcribe audio. I'm going to give you an audio URL, an app I built a bunch of times, in various places because I knew what it was supposed to look like. And it gave me the idea. It was like, do you want me to add rate limiting, right? Which is like, hey, they can't hit it, X number of times, or they can hit it X number of times, but not more. And sure enough, once it had built the initial app, I said yes. And some things I didn't say yes to, right? Like I was like, yeah, we don't need that thing, but we need this, and this. That's great. Check. And so it built the initial app. It had me test the initial app, and I said, yep, we're good. It's looking good. It tested it. I tested it. And then it's like, okay, now I'm going to build the rate limiting. And it built it in. And then it's like, use your API client to hit this 6 times. And on the 6th time, it should give you a message that says, hey, you've exceeded your rate limit, right, for this API in 24 hours. Sure enough, that worked, right? Then it implemented error handling. It's really very beneficial. Like the way, it's not even when I'm almost understating it, because it's a whole new way of working, right? I'm sitting there and it's like, that's my team. Whereas a year ago or 6 months ago, it was ChatGPT, that's my developer. Now I'm feeling like with agents, you have the ability to say, that's my team.
Yep. Yeah, so it's far exceeded your expectations, and even what our earlier expectations were when we originally had played around with what was that, ChatGPT in the early days, asking it. Well, we say early days, but it was about a year ago, right? Or a little bit more. But some of the output we got from that, and I can tell you that what I see is, and I'll ask you this question: where do you see the education for like coding going when it comes to that? Because obviously, kind of both sides of it, right? What it should look like from the initial idea to the execution of the idea, and then moving it into the application and having it be functional. Where do you see that going?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's not a super hard answer, I don't think. I think the focus is on 2 things. One, being able to speak naturally, right? And honestly, with Replit, you could do it with voice. You could drive it with voice. That's been my dream for so many years.
Right.
Let's just talk to this thing. Matter of fact, with ChatGPT, again, here was another cool evolution over the year. Is ChatGPT got at least in the application or the app on my phone and the app on the Mac, you could do voice with it, right? You could have a conversation with it. Now it interrupts. It's a little weird sometimes. But I was driving to work the other day and I was architecting an app with it. And when I got to work, I had code. Having a conversation in my car, building something.
Dream come true.
That's different.
Right there.
That's different. That's a whole different thing than it used to be, right? So I think communication is more relevant than ever.
Right.
Secondly, along the veins of communication, networking, which means human interactions, because right now, if we're talking about training, sure, there's technical training, but the new folks coming into the workforce, what they really need to do is make friends. Because
talk to people. Literally talk to people, not text, not anything else.
Yeah,
but talk.
Show up, eat the Domino's pizza at your local meetup, because those are the people who are going to be like, I'm going to give this kid a break. Seriously, because right now with AI, hey, we could generate 100,000 resumes. I could have it run all night and try to generate 100,000 myself, right?
Right.
And send them out, right? So with stuff moving so fast, there becomes a kind of a recentering on networking. So we've got communication, we've got networking. From the technical side, I think they need to they do need to learn fundamentals of application design, which part of that is coding, but they need to, it's really knowing like when ChatGPT or whatever tool you're using is giving you bunk, right? As I'm watching that agent flow by with 50 or 60 different things it's done, that doesn't mean it's done them right, or even like it could completely miss the mark. And I did see that in my first example. I said, generate a Django app, which is a certain Python framework, and it generated a Flask app, right? And then it got into a loop. So like it's still like these tools are still in a stage where they're going to hallucinate. And as I'm reading more about the science behind them, they may always hallucinate, right? So you've got to be able be able to understand what isn't correct, right? And I would say learning how to sort of get a second opinion, right? Whether you're using another AI for that or a person, or here's another tip: learning how to generate code that tests stuff that ChatGPT built and really benchmark, or whatever it is, what AI built, and benchmarking it. Like right now, like, hey, let's put this under a stress test, because you can build the code to test it very quickly, which wasn't exactly possible before. So a lot of people skip tests because they're like, oh, it just takes so much time. Now generating tests is easier than ever, so that's another thing I would say that people really need to learn, right? But I would say application architecture and design, that's and I don't mean design like, hey, what's a button look like? I mean like, hey, how is this stuff, like if I drew it on a whiteboard, what would it look like? Being able to do that, because if you can draw it on a whiteboard nowadays, you could build an app pretty quickly. And again, here's just another tip for folks: is you could write a really awesome prompt with 100 words or whatever, and it could be like you could have said everything perfect, but ChatGPT or any of these AI tools are much less likely to write you that whole application from end to end correctly than they are to write a little piece, then another little piece, right? You want to break things up into atomic units. So going back to what I was saying about specifics of things, it's communication, it's networking, it's application architecture and design, and then it's application testing and benchmarking, and being able to use ChatGPT or whatever tool to build that out and then also test that.
Yep, that's great. That's it'll be interesting, honestly, to see what the colleges do with it as far as their coding courses, because obviously you won't need as much of that early on stuff that, say, you had, when you came up through and were educated. So it'll be interesting to see how that pivots.
Yeah, and here's just another, while we're on coding, because I think we can probably segue soon. I would say another little, life hack with this is that newer frameworks, newer libraries in development, they're not going to be as well trained with LLMs. So, for instance, you've got a language like Python. LLMs and ChatGPT, they're the most fluent in Python because they've trained on a lot more Python than they have, let's say, Elixir, which is another language I've used and I love. I love both languages, but if I have ChatGPT write me some Elixir code and I have ChatGPT write me some Python code, it's going to have a lot more of a point of reference for what it's going to do with the Python code than the Elixir code. That doesn't mean that I have gotten good code out of both for both languages. It's just you have to try a little harder. And if there's a newer framework or a library in your language, that can be really tricky because ChatGPT or LLMs, even ones that search the web, will have it's hard to get them to have a notion of what you're looking for. An example recently was something called fast HTML. Well, in Python, Fast HTML is newer. It's smaller, as in not as well adopted yet, right? But it's a really cool library. I tried to get ChatGPT to write some code. It had no idea. It was trying to write Python fast API code. It wrote me over and over the wrong code, had no notion of what I was trying to do. So that's just something to note is, in the past, I may have reached for something that was, newer to play around with, and I still will. I just know that there are some limitations there with generating that code.
Yep. What do you want to segue into now? Now that we covered coding extensively.
That's it. That's the episode, right? We're at 9. No, I'm just kidding. So we've talked about generative art. We've talked about coding, which, let's talk about, and this is also art as well, but let's talk about one of the biggest surprises for me, which is how far generative AI video has come in this 1 year period. So, Rico, sometime last year, we were watching Will Smith eat some spaghetti noodles.
That's right.
And it was the craziest, weirdest, morphiest thing ever, right?
Cool at the time, but not perfect.
Cool at the time. It was like, and everybody said, hey, this is only going to get better. Just like I say it every day. I look at something and I say, that's only going to get better, right? And it's going to get better pretty quickly, generally, right? Just let's say 3 months ago, you had some things released like Runway ML Gen 3 Alpha, which they did some testing in Kling AI, which is another one. They did some videos on people eating spaghetti noodles, and it was so much better than what we saw just a year ago with the Will Smith example. And I'll do a quick call out to OpenAI here, because I think what they showed with Sora showed, because we still do not have it. They showed some really impressive stuff in February that we still don't have. The general public doesn't have, and it's, in my mind, a bit embarrassing that you've got like Kling, you've got Luma. Luma is okay, it's not that great, but Kling's really good. I'd say Runway ML Gen 3 Alpha, super freaking good, and they're like really hitting it, right? They're going hard on that. So generative video, are there any contenders in that space that you found that you were kind of surprised, like underdogs, let's call them?
Yeah, I think Final Frame is one that's up and coming. They were taking static images that were then turned into some sort of animation, whether it's I think it was a 3 or a 12-second video, depending on how much you paid and that type of stuff. But yeah, they were one that were a smaller one that kind of took off on X. That's where I noticed them the most. Yep. When we were playing around with MidJourney a bunch. So I think you'll see more from them. And I think they're also partnering. I want to say it's Luma, but it might be another company. They're recently looking into partnering to get more into the generative art in the video side of things. So
nice. Very cool. Another really good one that we saw that was it was generative art, but 3D spaces specifically, was Blockade Labs, right? The Skybox AI, which is where we generated our lab background images, like the ones that we're looking at right now. So it's pretty impressive stuff. I mean, there's just so much. Like you could have a whole episode that's 1 hour and 2 hours really, and on just generative art stuff. But let's move on to, why don't we talk about the voice now?
Sure.
Why don't we start talking about voice? So I have really only tried, I've tried a few products, but I've really only been impressed with 11 Labs so far. So 11 Labs allows you to do its text to speech. They have translation now. So you could take, audio clips and it'll translate them. They have voice cloning. I cloned my voice, right? And it turned out really good. They've even got like, you can actually gain royalties from your voice, right? So Brian is one of the voices.
Right.
Exceptionally good. And, hey, if people are using Brian's voice and Brian signed up for their royalty program, then he's got to be making a lot of money. He's like number one. Just such a beautiful voice that man has. But anything else related to like voice stuff that you tried, either text to speech stuff like that?
Nothing that stands out as far as text to speech. I mean, it basically once we played with a couple of them. I forget the names of them now, but 11 Labs by far overshadowed all of them. It wasn't even close. So.
It's canonical. I feel like it's canonical. There are a couple of other ones that do. I mean, Google has an engine for it. Amazon Polly, it's called Amazon Polly, it repeats what you say or whatever. That's another one. But I don't think any of them are like 11 Labs. Like the voices sound very natural. There are some other ones that do generate more natural sounding voices, but 11 Labs, I think in my mind, is the one that it isn't going away, right? It's a pretty established player in that field.
I was just going to say, as they introduce more policing tech, you'll probably hear Brian's voice on, some kind of robot outside your door. One of these things.
Definitely. Just talking real nice, just talking you down. So we're talking about text to speech. Let's talk quickly about the voice speech to text. So speech to text is transcription. And I would say that there are a few players in this field. I think that all of them under the hood are using OpenAI's Whisper model back when OpenAI was actually open and released stuff to the public. Right. And Whisper is still the best one in my opinion that I've used that's open source. But DeepGram has done some really great stuff with speech to text. They also do sentiment analysis, right? So, I have a 5-minute phone call. DeepGram, I can transcribe that phone call. I can get sentiment, right? How are people feeling? The confidence level of that. It'll do something called diaritization, which is like speaker identification. From the experience of using their API to onboarding with DeepGram, there's another one called Assembly AI. I have played with it. They give you some credits as well. I wasn't as happy with Assembly. And again, Google has Google transcription and AWS that's a thing, right? So anytime we say, hey, there's this service, you can pretty much guarantee that we're not going to probably mention Google or Microsoft or even that very much because they all have something. But I think there are these standout players that sort of they niche in that specific thing, and it's just in my mind better, right? Google text to speech is super okay. Google's transcription, super okay. Nothing like 11 Labs and nothing like DeepGram. It's not even close. Not even close. And DeepGram has some new services that I don't even remember exactly what they were, but I think they have text to speech now. So we're gonna have to hit that up and play around and see how it compares to 11 Labs, because they're focusing on allowing you to build out these really automated platforms. Part of that is, hey, let's generate some audio right now based on, let's say, what AI gave us to respond to this person.
Yep. I think we have a contact over at DeepGram, don't we? Somebody we were going to talk to last year. We should probably try to get back with them. Maybe we can get an update.
Yeah, he left DeepGram. He's doing a really interesting thing. He's doing a really interesting. That's Adam Streeter. He's doing some really interesting stuff, but it's not a DeepGram. I do have multiple contacts there though, and absolutely we can definitely check that out. What that made me think of with the AI voices is Bland AI, which is something you showed me. We saw this. Where'd you see that originally?
I think that we got it from the was it This Day in AI podcast? I believe it was. If not, it was the other one. I forget the name.
Yeah, Last Week at AI.
Something like that. Yep. And they were using that for prank phone calls at the time. They were very convincing, and I think the overall theme of that was basically to try to get at somebody. But it was quite hilarious. It was very, very funny. So yeah, Bland AI, and they were mixing it with another AI at the time, which I don't think was publicly available because I think we applied for it and we're on a waiting list. But yeah, Bland AI was definitely a good one.
Yeah, so Bland AI, folks, just to let you know, Bland AI will dial. You can dial numbers. It's like an agent that will speak to whoever answers the call. It can detect an answer. It can detect, pauses. You can tell it, hey, wait for somebody to say something, or you tell it, hey, no, say the first words, right? And what's really cool is you can tailor the voice, right? So let's say here was my idea with it. It's like you got a customer down in Georgia, and you got your Southern Jessica's call, and hey, this is Jessica from da-da-da. But that's really an AI, right? But then let's say in New York, you can have one that's like, hey, I'm walking here.
The most stereotypical.
But the reality is, so with Bland, what's really cool is it uses AI. So you give it basically a prompt and you say, hey, here's some guidance, kind of like you do with the custom GPT. Here's some guidance, and it will actually flow the conversation. Like I talked to one of my Bland AI agents, and I said something about Ferris Bueller, and then it totally had a reference from it, and it was like talking about something with Cameron. So and it did flow very naturally. It's surprisingly good. So yeah, that was another one that like super out of left field that got me. And thinking about, I was just talking about how we can guide Bland GPTs, right? The custom GPTs. That was another big thing. Rico, why don't you just spit some knowledge just about GPTs? Like, what's your take 6 months ago whenever they came out, and now, like, has anything evolved? We've had the store release, obviously. What's your take 6 months ago and now on custom GPTs and, let's say, goods and bads, uglies?
So the custom GPT thing, I mean, the only sad thing for me on that is that I don't think it had a long enough duration in time. Things moved a bit too fast with it, right? So we had custom GPTs introduced, and right before that, they had the store where you could go on and we could download, these different tools to attach to it. What were they called at the time?
They were called plugins. They were called
plugins. Yes. Yeah. So you had the plugins, and we went through that phase for a very short time, and we were excited because there were many things you could do. And then the custom GPTs came around, and then of course we filled those with knowledge and everything. And then they moved beyond that, and I really enjoyed the custom GPTs because you could drop into, say, there's one it was a legal, I think it was like legal AI or something like that, and you could do contract work and you could do some research for legal stuff. And then of course I had created one that was doing my own workout stuff, so that I could compare and contrast my workouts. I could get some data from that, which ultimately just became a function of ChatGPT, because you drop it in the knowledge base, and then we had our podcast custom GPT that we did, which was kind of fun. And I've used that a few times where it's say, I want Mike's take on something. So I say, here's this bit of information. I want to hear it like Mike would say it. And then boom, what do you know? It comes out in Mike's tone, of course, written.
It does a pretty good job. Yeah.
It does a very good job. Yeah. I've actually tried it out. And of course, our friend Nick over at Nomad Studios, I was having a conversation with him a couple of weeks ago, and Nick was like super impressed with something. And I said, so Mike actually didn't write that bit. That's actually like a GPT I used to get Mike's tone. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, that's like 100% me, but it came out as Mike. So that's some of the fun stuff we've seen with ChatGPT is what we've been able to do. I haven't played around with the newest model yet. I was just actually looking at that earlier, but I was trying to tweak a custom GPT that wasn't working right. So they still got some work there. I will say one thing, if I can, about so ChatGPT. One of my issues, of course, as the skeptic, has always been information bias. Of course, I look at the ethical side of things, and there's some information that we took, and I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of the information, but let's say it's controversial in nature. There are definitely two sides to the issue at hand. There were factual information that was presented by scientists in another language in another country, and we had taken a transcription from that directly, dropped it into ChatGPT, and asked it to transcribe it, word for word. And what was interesting about it was ChatGPT did do the transcription on it, but it left out a lot of the pertinent data that would be considered controversial, again, facing those two opposite sides. So I'm still very skeptical, Mike, about the information bias and who it is that's running it. We've seen a lot of drama happen with OpenAI, with the board seats, with Sam Altman leaving. coming back, possibly going to Microsoft, then coming back, and then of course him coming back in, their safety team being diminished, 2 or 3 CEOs leaving from that group of people, which really gets, in our newsletter, in the AI Bytes newsletter, we talk time and time again. I know I beat it like a drum just all the time. Transparency. That's what we're going to need to get to adoption. And they keep getting away from that. And that's the stuff that still makes me skeptical with ChatGPT. I haven't seen so much from Claude. As much as I played with Claude, Claude definitely gives you a different output depending on what you're using it for. But yeah, that's my take on ChatGPT. I'm still very, very skeptical with it, but I'll continue to use it. And I see that the numbers of folks that are using it are still increasing. There's lots of folks that are using ChatGPT. So
yeah, for sure. So with custom GPT specifically, and the store, I will say, so somebody asked me just the other day, they said, hey, do you have any ideas for AI tools that do interview prep? And I said, not off the top of my head, but I was thinking in my head, like, there's got to be a custom GPT for that, and probably ChatGPT by itself. I could write you a prompt that would probably do a pretty good job. But I went and looked for tools. There's nothing great. And the one thing I waitlisted, and I haven't heard anything back. So I went into the GPT store, took a look. Of course, there's two interview prep. There's actually probably 15 or 20 that literally called interview prep, but you can see the ones that at least are giving you the usage of them and people can review them. So I'm looking at the ones that have like 4.5, star overall review, right? And I found 2, interview prep tools for her that are going to be free. And I said, hey, I haven't used these, but I bet they're just fine, right? For what you're trying to do. They'll go back and forth. They'll quiz you and ask you about the company, and then it'll do some basic research. Which, speaking of research, that just made me think of my favorite research and search tool, which is Perplexity AI. That was a big surprise. That when it came onto my radar, it was probably the end of last year. And it really hit my radar in January, though. I went to this, business conference, a lot of like super people that are just, completely trailblazing. And the guy was saying, I canceled my ChatGPT account and I only use Perplexity. Now, in my mind, after playing around with it a bit, both of them, and using them a lot every single day, he's wrong. I have both. I'm glad I have both because Perplexity is extremely good at research. It's not great at writing, even though it's using, ChatGPT behind the scenes, or you could actually, like for the pro version of Perplexity, you can hook it up to Claude or a few different ones, right? And I've tried a few of them. And it is very tuned. It doesn't mix topics well. So one specific exact topic it's really good at. If you try to mix and mingle a couple things and mesh them and find trends together, I don't want to say it can't do that. It doesn't. I've not gotten results with that seem even, reasonable at all, right? Whereas ChatGPT, even though it's not directly at research, I could take some outputs and some different stuff I'll use the tools together, right? I'll say, hey, Perplexity, boom, give me some information. I'll use that as an input to ChatGPT. I'll use another Perplexity conversation as another input, right? And I think it really is a mix and match of tools, right? Like there isn't a silver bullet out there, folks, yet well, there are some silver bullets in my mind for certain things, like 11 Labs for the audio stuff, right? Text to speech. I think that's pretty much a silver bullet, right? Because they have the API. You could do almost anything with it, right? Hey Gen for video generation, like video avatar generation, and like even training your own avatar. There are a few other ones, Synthesia in video. There's nothing like Hey Gen is in my mind the one. It just produces such freaking great results, and they're adding very smart features and integrations. Like they integrate now. HeyGen integrates with 11 Labs. They integrate with Canva. Companies that people are already using the product, right? So So AI avatar video generation, I would say just to throw that on the topics here. We don't have to talk a lot about it, but because it's a really simple one. Hey Gen, if you're looking to do video avatar generation and scripted videos with avatars speaking, Hey Gen is going to be your product, and it's kind of expensive, right? Like if you want to do it at scale, it's not cheap.
Right. Now you mentioned tools in there, so why don't we pivot into tools and talk about some of the successes and the failures of tools that we've seen that have, of course, everybody wants to slap the label. It has AI in it, and there's been the hype cycle. We saw one, for instance, what is it? Is it the R1 Rabbit or Rabbit R1?
Yeah, we wrote about that, or we talked about that actually early on in our newsletter. Maybe our first newsletter, we had talked about that because it seemed very promising, right? It's an AI, it's a piece of hardware. We've got it in our biggest fails list, by the way, along with some other things. But yeah, the Rabbit, they marketed it as its own LLM, like as in they trained it. And what they figured out is some people reverse engineered it, and it's basically tree logic, branching logic. So it really can only do certain things, and if you go outside those confines, it's always going to use OpenAI. So in other words, people were thinking, oh, well, it's this little private LLM that's on the device and it's not going out to the big man, OpenAI, and it always pretty much is.
Of course it did. Yep.
And this is an FYI.
I was just telling Mike before the show here, the recent statistic on it as of yesterday, or about, I guess not even full yesterday, but 100,000 sold, only 5,000 have active users currently.
Right.
So that's not good for that company.
That is a fail. The other, we're talking about it, right? And we wrote about this too, twice. Once where it was like, hey, this might be promising. And secondly, like, whoa, this is a huge fail. Is Humane AI pin, right? This pin that you wear,
wearable device.
It's got the camera. It's got some different stuff. They were overheating. They're doing all kinds of stuff. What they're doing is, I think the biggest issue is just like a lot of these AI tools, even the just software only ones, they're rushing to market, right? So they're going for speed over even a viable thing, right? And some like they're creating solutions that have AI in them because they know they could sell that, rather than doing what, one of the things we figured out is, hey, you need to start with a problem. Always start with a problem. The Rabbit really didn't solve any problem. Like if you just like, and the Humane AI pin didn't really solve any problem either, right? Like it's sort of like trying to shoehorn something in because it's got AI in it, right? Whereas then on the influx of that, right, you've got like the Ray-Ban glasses, right, or some of these AR glasses that are getting better and better. That I actually see some real I can see that just being the thing that people just do, right? That's getting better and better. And one of the cool uses for that I saw was, you could have it snap a shot, every whatever amount of time, and then you can go back and like reference and say, hey, I was walking into an apartment like half an hour ago or sometime earlier today. I swear, what color was that door? I swear it was like a light blue. I'm looking for that same shade. I want to do my door on my house with that same thing. And it'll go back and it'll reference that, which is, I forgot what the guy's name is, but he's like mad scientist type dude. He's always wearing his glasses. He wears them everywhere. And he just is like documenting his whole life.
I would do that too, because I could just say, where the hell did I put my AirPods 3 weeks ago?
Right.
Where the hell
Exactly. You don't even have to have like the little air tag, because you can just say, hey, where's my thing?
Where the heck did I put them? Yeah. All right.
What other so biggest fails? I'm just going to mention two more. Google Gemini, the AI image generation controversy, right? Like they've relaunched it again, but they had, Rico, why don't you go ahead and explain it to people? You wrote all about this, and I'll let you take this one.
You talking about recently, or like I still don't think I've ever gotten that to work for me, in all honesty.
All right, I'll explain it.
Yeah.
They had like, it was kind of like a woke AI where You tell it to generate a picture of the Nazis in World War II, and it would generate like
African American Nazis.
Not accurate at all, right? Completely not accurate. And so that's a huge issue. So they shut that down, right? And now they've relaunched it, but they've got a stipulation. I just heard this just recently. They've got a stipulation, even though they've relaunched it, that they won't generate public figures. They won't, they've limited it, right? They've neutered it basically, because it can't do the job correctly, right? This isn't even on our list, but I just thought about it. Biggest fail is AI writing detectors, like detecting AI writing, detecting AI images. They sucked at it. OpenAI made one. They shut that tool down because it was not accurate, right? So the teachers would be like, "Oh, you wrote an AI," and the kid's like, "No, I didn't. Like, I didn't at all," right? So
I've had that happen. I've literally written articles and like put it in there, and it's come back and it said that it was AI written. It's like it's not AI written.
Yeah, for sure. What about biggest wins? Like we talked about a few of them, like Runway. I think they had some serious wins this year. Any other ones that it's like, just things that came out of left field for you?
Not left field, but I will say to me, ChatGPT is a win, for the main reason of taking large data sets and then refining them really quickly. That's probably my favorite thing to do with it. It's constantly like driving ideas for me, so it definitely is a tool that I use quite frequently. I think it's a win. I think they have a long way to go. There's a lot of things I would like to see change with it, how the company is run and that type of stuff. I'm almost hoping that somebody else comes up with something like it and kind of outdoes them eventually with keeping true to the true, transparency and letting people see behind the curtain. I think that would go a lot further than the direction of it, where they're getting involved with the military complex and all the other stuff, and putting some folks on that board that kind of make you scratch your head. But yeah, that's my I think biggest win for the year. I think ChatGPT is still up there for me.
Yeah, no, that's great. Let's jump into trends here. We'll kind of wind things down with trends that we've seen over this year and then trends we see coming. I'll start with, multimodal AI. So this means that AI is able to analyze, not only text and generate text, but video. It's able to analyze images. It's able to analyze audio, right? Now, I'm not saying ChatGPT can do all of these things right now, but ChatGPT did release their Omni-model, which added a lot more support and, improvement, right, to analyzing images and whatnot. And half the time these days, I'll take a quick little snip of something. I'll even do a snip of something on a web thing that I'm, doing, like an interface, and I'll write WTF on there, ? And do a little arrow to something. Because it gets the point across, right? It gets the freaking point across. It's like, what the F are you doing here, right? So multimodal AI, I think that's been a trend over the year. We're going to see even more of that. I'd love to be able to do it through an interface, do video through an interface. Right now, you can use apparently Google's Vertex AI, and their Gemini 1.5 is actually very good at going through processing a video and knowing what happened in the video at different parts and whatnot. That's super kick-ass. I'm not seeing that with anybody else. So I'd say canonical for that, like computer vision and video, would be that Vertex AI Gemini 1.5 Pro. Next one would be that Agenic AI. I mentioned Replit AI agents. I'm seeing more and more that these companies are launching products around the idea of agents, which is a team and not a person. They're not people and they're not teams, but they can do stuff. They can do things. Right. So I'm seeing Agenic AI. There have been some serious improvements there. Another one, as you mentioned, is RAG, right? So retrieval augmented generation, which allows you to do things like build those custom GPTs. When you're uploading knowledge files, that RAG is being used then to take your prompt, your custom instruction, and the knowledge that you gave it, and retrieve that knowledge and determine if it's relevant, and then guide the outputs based on that. So RAG has been really one of the big things that I see. Just everything's got RAG in it now. I will say that there are still some even limitations to that on some of these public models. It just isn't as good. We talked to Tim Hayden about this. It isn't as good as if you were to train your own model, fine tune it, build your own little RAG system in there. But not everybody can do that, right? Like, it doesn't make sense for everybody to do that. So I think just having the ability to store longer, like to store knowledge. Notebook LM, which is a new Google thing, just released probably a week ago. And that's kind of similar to a custom GPT, where you build a notebook around a subject. You can upload files to it. You can upload URLs to it. And then you start chatting with your notebook. So this idea,
this could be a great feature.
Heavily uses RAG, right?
Yep.
And another one would be open source AI models, right? Like, this is something that we saw, Meta really start leading the way with. They've got the different Llama models. They just released 3.2, Llama 3.2 yesterday or the other day. Very impressive to see that. And what I love about that is you could take that, those open source models and you could run them locally. Like, I could run that on my machine, or I could run that on something like Hugging Face, which keeps things a little more private than running your stuff through OpenAI. So, or any of those bigger, like even Anthropic or Perplexity has an API. I feel a little bit more safe, right? Running my data through something that I control as much as possible, right? And I will say, so Hugging Face is one option to sort of host and run these models. Another one would be Microsoft's Azure AI Studio. That's a wonderful product as well, right? And so, I'm in my mind, I'm shifting more and more to like, hey, let's not like build an OpenAI assistant and run everything through OpenAI. Let's actually start to really kind of like refine, fine tune our own models around these open source models, and then use those instead of, right? Which is also, I believe, Tim Hayden's strategy and great trust.
That's what I was going to say, making more of a sandbox environment, wrapping it so it's safe, it's not connected to anything, and they're not training on your data as you build out whatever you're building out to be released in the next version of ChatGPT.
Right? Exactly. Your whole customer list. They're going to,
Yep. I think one of the other trends we talked about too is the AI governance, right? It's the trend that which we knew was going to come because the guardrails weren't going to be there early on. They just can't keep up with the technology. We don't want it governed to the point to where, again, it neuters the AI. You have some bad policies at your company. You're making an AI, and what do you get? You get bad outputs. You get images that aren't true to history, that aren't true to whatever it is that the user is trying to create. But the AI governance around, let's say, election interference, or some of these political figures that they've been putting in compromising positions, whether it's through generative art or using campaign style videos, audio, that type of thing that we've seen that has kind of stirred people up, which we knew it would. Ultimately, as a free expression, it's a way of somebody just expressing themselves, but they do have some impact in the real world. So obviously we'll see some AI governance in the near future. You have some states like California going kind of crazy with the idea, if you can imagine, which we wrote about in our recent AI Bytes newsletter. But that's another trend coming, will be the AI governance, to see what they end up doing with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I think if I was looking at trends for 2025, I think that a lot of it is going to fall around regulation and governance and
agreed.
Transparency. I'm really interested to see what happens with OpenAI. With the different things that are all happening. We just had their CTO now, resign, is leaving, and that company's a mess, right? Like, I do use it, and the reality is, like, I'm always cautious about, I don't put all my eggs in their basket. I guess that's a trend that I've seen too over this past year is, what you put all your eggs in OpenAI's basket and OpenAI goes down, then you're down, right? So you have all these wrapper products that, when OpenAI goes down, which they did at least once this year for like an extended multi-day. They had a bunch of problems, and a bunch of services had had those same problems. Another trend that I see is Perplexity continuing to gain market share on Google search, and really just continue to like dominate. I think they're already at like some crazy like 10% of the amount of people are doing Perplexity searches over Google searches, or like it might not be quite that, but like it's like a surprising amount in the amount of time that Perplexity's been around. And I'm seeing them do more advertising, right? Like, because they're starting to, whether they're bringing a ton of revenue in or not, I'm not 100% sure on, but I'm seeing them to really get aggressive on, hey, this is our market and we're taking it, right? Like, and so that's not easy to do. I don't think it's going to happen in a day, but again, it's a trend is I see that I think they're going to gain more market share because it's such a superior way to do things. It's like, the difference between, a pager and, iMessage or something, right? Like, it's much more efficient, right? It's the new way to do things in my mind. Another trend that I see more and more, kind of see it this year, but I see it even more is, omni-channel CX. So products like Dave George talked about and is actually he's deployed it. We're using it at Clarity now, which is their Helios product, which is, customer engagement platforms. I see this more and more. I think that we're going to see these tailored experiences where two things are going to happen. One, you as the consumer are going to be able to interface and communicate with me over many channels, which that's not brand new, right? That's omni-channel. And secondarily, the tailored, customized experience to exactly how you want to be interacted with is only getting more tailored, right? We talked about this with Tim. That's kind of the goal too, right? Like, I want to deal with people and things that know me. They know me. Show me that you know me, and I'm gonna be a happy camper, right? Like, I want to buy from people that know me. And so I think that the strategy of really being able to target in and hone in on your potential customers and exactly how they want to be talked to and everything else and tailored experiences, that's another one that I see just is going to just absolutely take over. Another one, probably this will be my last one on trends that I see coming is it's already starting. I'm starting to see it, but I don't think it's been implemented like widely at scale. Is hooking up knowledge bases to to chatbots and having it be a really nice experience. Like right now, it's kind of generic. Again, I think the dream is for it to guide you to exactly what you need to be doing at that moment. And there's one AI tool called Balto AI, which is super impressive. You actually hook it up to your telephony system while you're on a phone call. It's like popping up, like saying, hey, did you say this? Oh man, he just talked about whatever. You should say this, right? And just giving you
like coaching in real time.
Yeah, coaching in real time. I think that is that's another one that's like, just going to be more and more tuned in, and people are going to be either wanting it or, some people are going to be implementing it. And so that goes into that knowledge base and really, let's call it your company's playbook. You want your tools to be integrated with your company's playbook so that every moment when your people are out there representing your company and your brand, they know exactly what to say. It's all no-brainer moments. And obviously they can improvise, but damn, wouldn't it be nice if you just kind of like knew what to do?
Right. And your new employees knew what to do day one, right? On the phones without having to listen for 6 months to a year to 3 years to get the lingo.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
cool. What else do we have, Rico? Anything?
No, I think we can wrap it there, and if you don't mind.
You know what? Hey, I think this is the longest 30-minute episode I've seen. And no, so folks, thanks so much for watching. Like I said, we've got some really cool and beneficial episodes coming up. We're going to talk to, his name is Ravi. He is the CEO and founder and inventor of an AI that actually a device that sits in your pool and cleans your pool, keeps the levels up, monitors, super kick-ass. And then we're going to be talking to Dave George as well. He's going to come on specifically. We're going to be talking about Helios, which is their omni-channel customer engagement platform. So lots of good stuff coming up. And, if you like what you're seeing and hearing, we'd love for you to drop us a like, subscribe, whatever. It's in one of these directions somewhere here. You'll see a little subscribe button on YouTube. We'd love for you to click that and leave a comment, right? Let us know what you're thinking. What would you like to see more of as well, right? Because we never operate in a bubble, which is why we started having guests on, right? So we want to hear your thoughts, and if you're interested even in being a guest, you have something to say, feel free to reach out to us and let us know.
Absolutely. And I just want to mirror that and just say thank you, everybody, for this past year. Mike and I have had a lot of fun making this content, learning along the way, making the contacts we've made. If you or anybody you know who is involved in business is using AI in some way to 10x either the employee's output or your own, please give us a call, give us a message on LinkedIn and let us know. And of course, like and subscribe, comment below. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you back in the lab soon, folks.
See ya.